Hello, and welcome to the Forbidden Knowledge Podcast. My name is Nathaniel Hoytmacher, and I will be your host. Today we'll be continuing on with the Initiate's journey, and we will be doing episode 2 of Living in the Present Moment, and why it is important, how to do so, benefits of doing so, how to know whether you're in it or not. Living in the present moment means that you have to commit to that moment. You have to be completely open and vulnerable to it. You have to allow it into yourself and whatnot. And in order to do this, you have to become like an empty vessel to a certain extent and drop your preconceived notions about what's going on in the present moment, what your expectations are, and making it so that way you have a mini taste of death, if you will, when it comes into this. And what I mean by this is that the pre-programming that you have based upon the things that have happened into your past, and to you in your past, make it so that way all of that is dropped completely. And you have a potential for something new to come into being from this. You might be thinking, what the hell are you talking about here to a certain extent? And, well, we all have had moments like this for what's going on. We could do this, especially when we're kids and we're playing games and whatnot. We talk about how the time flies and it doesn't feel like it's even been whatever the amount of time that it is with it. When we're having loads of fun doing something, that's because we're committing to that moment. We're enjoying the moment. We're doing everything we can to partake and participate in that moment rather than running away from it, rather than trying to control what's going to be happening with it. We're just along for the ride. And that's important to a certain extent for what's happening. This is what happens when you make it so that way, you have sex with a partner and whatnot, someone you care about and love, and then the orgasm that comes from that. And that particular moment, the amount of pleasure that comes from that and the commitment that it takes to get to that level of things with it and letting it consume you and take over makes it so that way everything else just disappears for that particular instance for what's going on. And by doing so, it makes it so that way you are completely committed to that moment. And so commitment to that moment, commitment to what's going on, to making sure that you understand and have everything around you and whatnot, is what allows you to be in the present moment. And it makes it so that way your sense of self dies temporarily, and you kind of get this mini reset that's inside of you by doing so. And you can bring in something that, in the Eastern traditions, they might call no mind, to where there are no real thoughts present. Remember how last time I showed you that where thoughts come from is from our own memory bank, and therefore it comes literally from the past, and we're using that to project onto the future. But if you have no mind, if you have to where the space in between thoughts, you make it so that way you have a much more capacity to just be in the presence of life, to experience it deeply, to make it so that way you feel emotions that you haven't felt before, or have thoughts that you haven't felt before, or even just to be at peace instead and making it so that way all the struggles that you are trying to accomplish and whatnot just go away, and they kind of melt away from you and whatnot. This is the importance of it. It makes it so that way we are no longer controlled by our past. We are no longer thinking about our futures and all the fears and worries and doubts and anxiety that might come from that. When we are truly in the here and now, it makes it so that way we aren't fighting life, and instead are living in tune with it and to our own needs, and just having a blast in a lot of sense with it, or peace and some sort of serenity maybe, or whatever it is that's going on at that particular moment. And sometimes it can be even a negative emotion that you're feeling, but you're committing to it and you're allowing it to actually be felt and to deeply sit with it rather than to make it so that way you kind of gloss over it. And so the autopilot that we have that runs in our mind most of the time, that makes us that way we're not actually living, is actually living. This is when we live our life. This is when we, feel passionate about something. This is when we go and do something with like music, and we get dancing and hearing it and get consumed by it and get into this rhythmic state and whatnot. And it puts our mind into a different space than it normally is. And we get to make it so that way we see things differently, or that it's not really there, and we're just kind of in this rhythmic state that we get into, and it's a completely different style of being. And we don't do this often enough with ourselves. We get trapped in kind of the left brain prison of logical linear thinking too much, and this imbalance in our life, at least for most of us, so some people are too much in the present moment and don't have enough of the other side here with it. But in this instance, we're talking about living in the present moment, so that's what I'm going to be focusing on. It makes it so that way we get to understand things that we normally don't understand. And we have this silent partner that's kind of there all the time with it that we can pull from. And that's what's amazing about it. We have two parts of our brain, technically three we have that are major parts and whatnot, but we have the left side, we have the right side, we have other aspects to it, of course, and whatnot. And this is an oversimplification. I'm not trying to make this about neuroscience or whatever the deal is, but it's like we have two personalities inside of us, two different people even. One that thinks linearly, one that wants to put the order into everything, have explanations for everything with it, and the other one that's intuitive, that's creative, that gives you the insights that you have with it. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to tap in more into the secondary mode, because most of us are almost always in this primary mode of thinking linearly, thinking where we're doing with our analytical mind, and because we've been trained to do so since birth by our education system, and thinking rationally and all these other things that are going on with it that they want us to do. And this makes it so that way we are able to live more as holistic beings by being able to switch modalities whenever we need to. Because on the one side of things is like our conscious mind, and the other side is our unconscious and everything that we've ever consumed. Things that have nothing to do with us as an individual even. Some of it having to do with primal, deep-seated, things that are true of all human beings, and insights that are true of all times and places that come into being from it, that we can use and call upon and help us become what we want to become, or go after a goal that we want to go after. we need both sides to complement one another and not be in a fighting one another all the time with it. This is the point of being able to be in the present moment. This is also the point of being able to control your mind well enough to be able to get to this state and make it so that way you can even bring in no mind. We talked about before making it so that way you have to where you can control your mind for 15 seconds. And if you can't do that, then you don't have control over your mind controls you. And you are in a state of being to where you literally are just letting the programming, meaning the thoughts that are the most powerful, the habits that are ingrained into you, dictate your life. You are not able to break free of the patterns and conditionings that have happened to you. And the only way that that can be done is by actively trying to change and by actively living in the present moment and coming up with new ways of thinking than what you did before. Because otherwise you're just going to get the exact same results. And so, too many people don't understand the power that the present moment has, and they don't fully appreciate it and have gratitude towards it. And we've been taught to kind of ignore this other part of ourselves, in the Western world especially, and to only focus on external results and to only focus on, making it so that way everything is constructed in such a way that it has to be linear rather than cyclical or from no time at all. And it makes it so that way with these particular notions and ideas that are going on there that we need to throw some of them out sometimes and make it so that way we can, get to the hidden nuggets that are deeper inside of us that are maybe harder to find when we are only using one part of ourselves. Many cultures throughout time and space have developed many different techniques in order to help get people into the present moment. This goes back way before there are written records of anything for some of the stuff. Other things are more, closer to our time period, I guess you could say, and whatnot. We have meditation, which is ancient and goes back far before Buddhism or Hinduism or anything like that. We have to where rhythmic dancing and that kind of stuff. You see this with like the Sufis as a tradition that they do in order to become closer to God in their tradition. We have it to where just dancing regularly here in the, in various different parts of the Western world, even without a religious context, puts us into the present moment and makes it so that we're enjoying ourselves more. We have music, of course, same thing. That's something that's always been there, especially if it's like repeating type thing. That's a rhythmic thing, like a drum beating over and over again or something like that. Makes it so that way it can put us in a different state of being that helps us be here now rather than thinking about something else, of course, too. A lot of different traditions use some form of chanting to make that happen. Make it so that way, again, it's a repetitive type of chant or a repetitive type of noise that's being done with it to put the mind to be able to focus on the one thing to eventually get to where there is no thing that you're focusing on at all. So a lot of traditions make it so that way you have the one thing that you focus on to get to the nothing. And only in the nothing, only in the now, the thing that exists in the now, can we really get something out of life? Can we really get something new? When we have an epiphany, when we have this light bulb moment that, sometimes shown in cartoons or in movies or TV shows or whatever, when that happens to you, that's when you yourself have had a thought that has occurred that springs up from this well that I'm talking about and whatnot, that pulls from the unconscious that we can tap into and make it so that way we have this intuitive understanding of things. And when we are vulnerable to this moment, when we commit to it, when we are empty ourselves out of this stuff with it, that's when we can touch the inexplicable much more easily. And so this is a huge important step for the initiate's journey, because they were going to have to be able to go after and try to understand a higher power than themselves, as mentioned way back in the first couple of episodes, about how important having the knowledge and understanding that there is something that is outside of our control, and that humanity is not the highest power on this planet or this plane of existence, and kind of trying to conform to the dictates of that. This is why shamanic journeys were done by various different people and various different time periods, in order to make it so that way they could commune with the things around them and live more in the moment and get answers in the unseen planes of existence. And that's what we're tapping into whenever we live in the present moment. We're tapping into these unseen planes of existence, these areas that we don't have mapped out. Because if we did, then we would make it so that way it's just part of our regular daily existence. We wouldn't need to go try to live in the present moment in order to gain wisdom from it, or to try to change ourselves, or whatever we hope to do by living in the present moment more. And this is something that may not be easy for a lot of people. Some people, living in the present moment is extremely difficult. A lot of people's minds run around ragged inside of it, like a chicken with their head cut off. Different traditions have had different things that they use as metaphors to explain that. They call it the monkey mind in certain traditions. In some other ones, it's the incessant noise that like a rooster or a chicken makes, the constant clucking and moving around and all these other things to do with it. It's this deep-seated stillness inside of us that we can pull from, and it is always there. That's the important part about all this. It's always there. Even if we ignore it, we can always tap into it, and it's kind of like this room inside of our mind that allows us to have meta-awareness of what's going on within ourselves and the world around us, and be able to really focus on that. But we have to be able to get into this room in order to make it so that way we can truly see what's going on and truly understand what's happening, and then be able to make changes from there. And that's what the real point of all this is, at least for why I'm bringing it up, is to make it so that way we can learn how to get into this modality and how to get into this room, so we can actually actively take control of our lives, to make it so that we can actively start really changing things for ourselves and do what needs to be done to live the lives that we truly want to live. Of course, when we're in there, when we're living in the present moment, it makes it so that way nothing else matters. The past is gone. The future is gone. It's just the here and now. And newsflash, that's always the case. The only question is how our present moment is going to be, and what we choose to feel, and what we choose to think during this time period. We can't ever escape the present moment. It's always here with us. The only thing we can do is try to ignore it and make it so that way we don't commit to it. And by doing so, we make it so we cut ourselves off from potentially the best aspects of life. By making it so that way we focus too much on things that may not actually matter in any way, shape, or form. I know for a fact, for me, things that I worried about when I was younger, most of it never happened. Most of it never came true. Most of it was completely and utterly nonsensical for what my doubts were, for what my worries were, for what I was anxious about and whatnot. And eventually I even learned to remove these particular thought patterns within myself that were not benefiting me in any way, shape, or form. and to truly come to terms with the fact that why should I worry about stuff with it? And I brought this up before, but I'm going to just bring it up again. If you're doing the best that you can, and you've literally done everything that you can in order to stop doing things and stop things that you don't want from happening, prevent them from happening, then you've done everything you can. And there's nothing else you can do, and you need to let it go. Because that's where acceptance comes from. This is what living in the present moment is about. It's about acceptance of what has occurred. We are not the controllers of our fate. We can only influence it by making proper choices. But there's other people that make other choices that dictate what happened to us as well. And we cannot dictate what happens to them. We cannot control those individuals. There's stuff that neither one of us can control, meaning either us as individuals or the people around us. We might be able to influence certain things as a group collectively, but we still can't control everything with it, and we never will be able to control everything with it. And once we accept these things with it, it makes it easier to live in the present moment. It makes it so that way we are not letting our programming get in the way anywhere near as much, and it makes it very difficult to actually not get what you want out of life when you're able to step into this room of meta-awareness that I've talked about. And so wherever we put our attention onto things, whatever we focus on, whatever we make it so that way our awareness is mainly put towards, that is where things are going to occur. If we focus on the wrong things, we're going to get the wrong results. If we focus on the correct things, we're going to get the correct results. So, anyway, I think that this has been enough in terms of how this episode is going to play out in terms of the present moment. If there's any questions, you can leave it for me in the comment sections on YouTube, or you can make it so that way you go and reach out to me on various other platforms that I have to where you can just talk to me. You can even sign up for an email address and send me an email if you want various different techniques or various different help on living in the present moment and that kind of thing with it. I don't want to go and beat this over the head too much with it, mainly because, the point is to go out and actually do it. You're listening kind of to a description of, say, like having a cheeseburger or something like that, rather than actually eating the cheeseburger for yourself. And I'd much rather have people go and do that than listen to me talk about what the present moment is and whatnot. It's something that has to be experienced directly, and it has to be something that's understood on an intimate level, not something that can be handed to you, unfortunately. A lot of things are in life like this that you have to experience directly in order to fully understand it. And that's the point of the present moment, is to truly, deeply experience life for what it truly actually is, instead of what our projections of what it is are. And that's a very important thing that most people don't understand, is the wisdom that comes from making it so that way you just live life to the fullest by committing to life, by committing to the radical acceptance of it and being graced by the presence of what's happening around you right then and there. Because there are no such thing as ordinary moments, no matter how much your mind might try to convince you that there is. There's always something extraordinary going on. It's just that we typically tune it out. Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. I hope that you have got something from it. I look forward to seeing you all in the next episode. Please like and subscribe, comment if you wish, and y'all have a very great day.